James Krause and the UFC betting scandal. James Krause went from being a respected coach and analyst to becoming the Wolf of Wall Street of MMA, except with way fewer Lambos and a lot more athletic commissions breathing down his neck. The scandal started after UFC Vegas 64 when Darrick Minner, one of Krause's fighters, suspiciously crumbled just seconds into his fight, holding his knee like someone just snatched his soul. What made it sketchy? Betting odds spiked dramatically just hours before the fight, with people suddenly wagering large sums on Minner losing in the first round due to injury. And sure enough, boom! He loses exactly how the bets predicted. That's not fight IQ, that's insider trading in 4-ounce gloves. The UFC immediately suspended Minner, banned Krause from cornering, and dropped the hammer. Krause got cut off like an expired supplement. Even fighters who trained at his gym were blacklisted. The FBI got involved. Canada banned betting on UFC entirely for a hot minute. The whole thing turned MMA into CSI Vegas. Moral of the story? If you're a coach, maybe don't try to become the next Vegas odds guru, unless you enjoy being investigated by multiple governments. Brock Lesnar's tainted return at UFC 200. Let's talk about the walking slab of granite known as Brock Lesnar. He made his UFC comeback at UFC 200 against Mark Hunt and looked like he'd just walked off the set of 300. The man was absolutely jacked. Like, I bench pressed grizzly bears for breakfast, jacked. He ragdolled Hunt for 3 rounds, but it wasn't just Hunt who got bodied. USADA got hit too, because just days later, they announced Brock tested positive for clomiphene, a banned substance that bodybuilders use during post-steroid recovery. Oh, and he also failed another test taken before the fight. So the UFC knew, and they still let the fight go ahead. That's like letting a guy compete in a spelling bee after finding out he's been whispering to ChatGPT all week. Mark Hunt was understandably livid. He later sued the UFC, and the result was a no contest. Brock, meanwhile, walked off into the WWE sunset with a $2.5 million paycheck and a shrug. The whole thing felt like letting a school bus crash while yelling, but ratings though. Daniel Cormier's towel trick, UFC 210. Picture this, it's weigh-in day. Daniel Cormier walks onto the scale for his UFC 210 bout with Anthony Rumble Johnson, and he's over the 205 pound limit by 1.2 pounds. No biggie, right? Well, 2 minutes later, DC returns and miraculously makes weight. How? He's pressing down on a towel like he's trying to send an email through it. That's right, the old lean on the towel while pretending not to move. This wasn't some clumsy cheat. This was technique, A-level acting. Meryl Streep couldn't have pulled it off better. When asked about it later, Cormier smiled and said, "I grabbed the towel, but I didn't do anything dishonest." Sure, DC and I only borrowed my friend's Netflix password for 6 years. The New York Athletic Commission did nothing. No fines, no suspensions. The fight went on. Rumble got submitted. And DC became not just the 2-division champ, but also the Houdini of weigh-ins. That towel deserves a place in the UFC Hall of Fame. Anderson Silva's PED Pop 2015. The Spider, the legend, the matrix of MMA. But even Anderson Silva wasn't above getting caught in the USADA web. In 2015, Anderson returned to fight Nick Diaz after that horrific leg break and immediately popped for drostanolone and androsterone, 2 anabolic steroids. Then he popped again on fight night for benzodiazepines. And when the questions came, Anderson hit us with one of the all-time great excuses. It was a sexual enhancement pill from Thailand. Sir, we've all made bad online purchases, but using them as an excuse for steroids during a UFC comeback? That's next level. The NSAC didn't buy it. They suspended him for a year and fined him $380,000. The win over Diaz was overturned, and the GOAT conversation got a little more complicated. But hey, at least we got a new moral. Always double check what your pharmacist gives you in Bangkok. Alistair Overeem's Uber error gets busted. Alistair Overeem. Overeem in the early 2000s looked like he was built in a lab. Giant traps, chiseled jaw, legs thicker than tree trunks. The dude looked too ready for a heavyweight title shot, But before he could face Junior Dos Santos, Overeem got popped by NSAC. His testosterone to epitestosterone ratio was, wait for it, 14:1. For context, the normal range is 1:1. At 6:1, they raise red flags. At 14:1, they call NASA to confirm you're not part cyborg. Fans weren't even shocked. They expected it. Horse meat jokes were flying left and right. He was pulled from the title fight and suspended for 9 months. And the Reem's mythic monstrous aura took a massive hit. Still, let's be honest, those early Overeem fights were cinema. The German twin switcheroo. You ever see an MMA scandal so dumb it's kind of genius? Enter Alistair and Dritten Mehmeti, identical twin brothers from Germany. One of them was suspended, the other wasn't. So they figured, same face, same build, what's the worst that could happen? So the suspended brother fought using the other's identity at a sanctioned event. Yep, this really happened. Eventually, a promoter got suspicious, probably when the fighter couldn't remember his own birthday. The whole ruse unraveled and both twins got banned from competition. The MMA community gave it a nickname, Twin Gate. Honestly, the real crime here wasn't cheating, it was thinking it would work. This isn't a cartoon, boys. You can't just swap hats and mustaches mid-fight. Jeff Molina's silent suspension. Jeff Molina was on the rise, a slick technical striker, promising career, then radio silence, no explanation. Just removed from rankings, pulled from fights. It was like the UFC hit the mute button on his career. Eventually, news came out. He was implicated in the James Krause betting scandal too. The Nevada Commission suspended him for substantial involvement, but the exact details still murky. And that's what makes it so weird. No flashy headline, no press conference, just silence. One day you're in the rankings, the next you're a ghost. MMA's version of a disappearing act. Only instead of smoke and mirrors, it's subpoenas and betting slips. Yoel Romero's Stoolgate, UFC 178. Let's talk about one of the most blatant what just happened pies moments in UFC history. Yoel Romero gets rocked by Tim Kennedy at the end of round 2. Knees wobbling, eyes spinning like Windows 98. The round ends. The stool comes out. Round 3 starts, but Yoel stays seated like he's waiting for brunch. Kennedy's yelling, the ref's yelling, the corner's pretending they can't hear. Yoel finally stands up, and within seconds, boom, he TKOs Kennedy. Everyone loses their minds. It's now known as Stoolgate. Kennedy claimed it was the most illegal thing he'd ever seen. Dana White just kind of shrugged. No DQ, no point deduction, just the W for Yoel and a viral moment for the ages. Yoel later said he didn't understand what was happening. Either way, that stool had more cage time than some prelim fighters. So there you have it. Towel cheats, betting scandals, PEDs, and even twin switches. MMA isn't just wild because of the knockouts, it's the behind-the-scenes chaos that really makes it legendary. Hit that sub if you want more scandals, myths, and madness.